Now, when you start modeling in Maya, you may want to smooth your polygonal models. This is a great way to get the most model out of the least amount of detail. So here I have a very simple fish model. And if you click on it, you'll see that, well, it kind of looks like a fish, but it's really not all that smooth. If you zoom in here, you'll see that, well, this is where the edges of the polygonal model kind of show through. They're all straight lines. And so we get a very straight line kind of outline. But if we want, we can have Maya actually smooth our models for us. Now, this works mostly with the mental ray renderer, but you can always see it in a viewport. So the hotkeys for this are 1, 2, and 3. If I hit 1, I get into this mode, which is basically the raw model itself. If I hit 2, what it does is it keeps the raw model, but makes it into what's called a cage, and then shows me the smoothed model underneath. So if I, for example, zoom in here, you can see how this tail is no longer pointy. I get a curved shape from that. If I hit 3, I see just the smooth model. So this is a great way to keep your models light, but also have detail. Now, like I said before, this only works with the Mental Ray renderer. So if you want Maya to automatically smooth, you have to use Mental Ray. So we're not going to get too deep into rendering, but let me just show you very quickly here. If I click this button here and go into Render Settings, you'll see by default it's the Maya software renderer. So even though my model is smoothed, if I do a render, which is this button here, I still get kind of the jaggy model. But if I switch here in my render settings window to Mental Ray and render, I get the smooth model. Okay, so this is why Mental Ray is probably the renderer that you'll want to use the most with Maya. Now, the smoothing is really just something that you'll want to do as you start to model. In fact, you can actually model with smoothing turned on. So if I go into vertex mode, I can actually model this and see my character smoothed. Okay, so even though this may be the actual model, this is my smoothed version. Now, if I hit the 2 key, you can see the cage of the model. So I could actually see which vertices I'm selecting and how it smooths. And if I pull this really far out, you can kind of see that basically what it's doing is that it's averaging between these 3 points. So 1, 2, 3, and it's drawing a curve that averages these 3, which is very similar to how NURBS surface works when we get to that. So as you can see, as you start to model, if you keep smoothing turned on, you can get a very organic model with very little detail. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off this fish layer here. I'm going to go into my attribute editor, turn it off, and we're going to turn on the arm, which is what we were working with before. Now this hasn't been smoothed. I kind of turned smoothing off for this, and so you can kind of see how this works. Particularly this hose shape here. You can see how it's just a cylinder that has a bunch of jaggy edges to it. But if I hit 3 to smooth it, you can see how that automatically smooths down. So you can see how now I get a shape that looks a lot more like that rubber hose or rubber bellows. If I hit the 2 key, you can see how it's interpolating between this kind of zigzag shape. Now, if I hit 3 again and actually go back down to my hand, which I just created, you'll see that I'm getting all of these weird artifacts around the bottom lip of that Boolean. And this is why Booleans and smoothing aren't really compatible. So if you take a look at it in normal mode, if I hit 1, you'll see that, hey, yeah, I've got a really nice model here. But as soon as I smooth it, all the hidden detail that was used to create that Boolean shows up. And so this type of thing can't be smoothed. But the nice thing about this is that we can smooth parts of the model and not other parts. So if I say zoom in here and I do a quick mental ray render of this, you'll see I'm getting those artifacts. But the nice thing is that I can select just the hand and unsmooth it. So I'm going to hit 1 here. So this is not smooth, but the hose above it or the bellows above it is. So now I've got half my model smoothed and half of it not smooth, and now I can get a much better render. So now I'm getting all of this stuff is smooth, but the actual hand body is not. So you can actually selectively smooth or unsmooth objects. So the key here is that 1, 2, and 3 are the smoothing operations within Maya. This shows up in the mental ray renderer, and you can smooth parts of your scene and not smooth other parts.